Greetings, everyone. For those of you that still don't know me, my name is Xavier Rosario from designsxr, and today I'm going to be talking to you about terms of use. We're going to go a little bit more in depth on whether terms of use can be considered a valid contract. We're also going to unmask the truth behind I agree checkbox and determine if visitors are bound to terms of use, whether they have to click agree or not. For the purpose of this video, we're going to be using part one of the Priceline terms of use as an example. And based on their terms of use, I will be discussing whether or not you can sue Priceline if you have a dispute with them. Lastly, based on the research I've done, and for the educational purpose, I will be going over a few changes I would recommend Priceline to make to their terms of use. This is going to be a very interesting topic, so don't go anywhere and let's jump right into it. Let's start by defining terms of use. Terms of use are terms and conditions to which a user must first consent before the use or purchase of a site service. Terms of use are often seen on e-commerce websites and social media websites, but it's not limited to those types of websites and should be used with any website that stores personal information of any kind. When it comes to terms of use, there's two different types of agreement: browse wrap and click wrap. These two can be different and will directly impact the application of website terms of use. Browse wrap agreements are one that has the terms of agreement on the website itself and are connected to the main page of the product by like a hyperlink, something like that. These are the ones that you have to scroll all the way down and find the little hyperlink that says terms of use. Browse wrap agreements do not require users to take actions to affirm his consent to be bound. Instead, they typically state that the use of the website is deemed acceptance of the agreement. A click wrap, on the other hand, is different because it is designed to ensure that the user has a chance to see the terms of use, and they may also actively agree to the terms in order to agree. So basically, this is the I agree little checkbox or button. This tends to be set through a series of pop-ups on the website. Click wrap agreement requires the user to agree to terms and conditions before using a website or completing an installation or online purchase process. These agreements typically present the terms and conditions followed by a checkbox, like I mentioned earlier, with the word I agree or I accept that the user must click. When it comes to contracts, which are defined as an agreement between private parties creating mutual obligations enforceable by law, there are a few key elements that must be included in order for the contract to be considered valid. Some of these elements, the key ones, are agreement, consideration, intention, and competency. Let's briefly discuss these four elements. An agreement happens when an offer is made by one party to the other, and the offer is accepted. So remember, the offer has to be accepted in order for it to be an agreement. An offer is a statement of terms to which the person making the offer is prepared to be contractually bound to an acceptance to the offer, and it must be unconditional. This must be unconditional. Basically, by unconditional, it basically means like it's signed, whether it's digitally, word of mouth. Word of mouth is tricky, but it can either be digitally or in pencil or by clicking I accept and continue and stuff like that. And this must be communicated, by the way. The parties entering into a contract must exchange some value for a contract to be binding. This is called consideration. Consideration does not have to be adequate or for the benefit of the other person. It merely has to be sufficient. Not all agreements between parties are contract. It must be clear that the parties intend to enter into a legally binding contract. There's many cases in which we will come to loose agreements with family and friends, but we never intend for it to be legally binding. Basically, we're not expecting one person to sue the other if someone does or someone doesn't do something that is written or that they said they would do. This type of agreement is not valid. Again, the intent has to be there. You have to intentionally say that this is legally bound. So again, if you do this type of just word of mouth, they're not valid contract because there's no legal intent, unless you state there's a legal intent to it. The last one I want to discuss for the sake of time is competency, right? Basically, in order to be bound by a contract, those signing and entering into a contract agreement must be competent. They must be of legal age to sign a contract. They have to be mentally have the mental capacity to understand what they're signing, and they cannot be impaired. And by impaired, I mean they're not under the influence of any drugs or alcohol at the time of signing. So the question at hand is, are terms of use a valid contract? Based on the information I just provided, I would say that depends. If it meets the criteria of a contract, then yes, it is absolutely a valid contract. However, for websites that use browser wrap agreements, studies show that only 13% of them have been considered valid contract agreements. This is because they're lacking one or more aspects of what makes a contract. The main aspect being that user never agrees to a term. There's no signing, there's no I accept, there's no nothing like that. So the user is basically not agreeing to these terms. A prime example of this is in the case of Cynthia Hines versus Overstack, where the court found Overstock, they found the Overstock browse wrap was unenforceable because the website failed to prominently display the link to the online agreement in a way that would put users on notice of the website terms and conditions. In this case, Cynthia returned a vacuum and was charged a $30 restocking fee, and that was never mentioned on the that was only mentioned on the browser app agreement. If you want to read more about this case, the link is going to be in the description of this video. As I mentioned earlier, we're going to use Priceline as an example. When it comes to Priceline, they also have a browser wrap agreement. Now, I haven't purchased anything from Priceline, so I really don't know if there's some sort of click wrap agreement later on in the purchase process. But from what I see, they do have a browser wrap agreement. If they only have this browser wrap agreement, then, in my opinion, no, it is not a valid contract because the user is not necessarily agreeing. Furthermore, if the user doesn't see their agreement, how can they know the intention of such agreement, right? Now, let's elaborate a little bit more. Are visitors bound to browser agreement, or should they have to click I agree? I already gave you all my opinion that no, browser wrap agreements should not be considered valid contract. Therefore, again, it is my opinion that yes, a user must click I agree, which in terms of use, clicking I agree is considered your signature or your unconditional acceptance. But this must happen in order for the agreement to be binding. Nonetheless, whether browser wrap agreement is considered binding or not, it is totally up to the courts, and their decision may vary depending on the case. In the case of PDC Laboratories versus Hackco, the court found the browser wrap, their browser wrap was enforceable because the hyperlink was conspicuously displayed in contrasting text, and the checkout screen contained language telling the user to review the terms before completing the purchase. However, in this case of Nugent versus Barnes & Noble, the court found that Barnes & Noble's browser wrap was unforeseeable, although the hyperlink was promptly placed next to the buttons the users must click in order to complete online purchases. When it comes to Priceline, they added a mandatory arbitration clause in their terms of use. For those of you that are not familiar with arbitration, the main difference between arbitration and liquidation law is that the court is involved in the case of liquidation as it is a lawsuit. Whereas in arbitration, a settlement between the parties is done outside the courts. Because of Priceline having this clause on their terms of use, it could prevent anyone from going forward with any type of lawsuit. The clause states that it requires that all claim must be resolved by binding arbitration or in small claim courts, and it prevents you from pursuing class action or similar proceedings in any form. However, in reality, you can sue anyone just about anything. So yes, you can file a lawsuit against Priceline. The question should be, do you have a case? And this goes back to what I've alluded through this video. It all depends on the court you're dealing with, and if they rule as if you, the user, are binding to the browser wrap agreement on their website or not. If you're binding by the agreement, then you don't have the case. If the court finds that you're not binding by the agreement, then of course you do have the case. Uber had a similar case back in 2018 when the plaintiff asserted that Uber charged fictitious or inflated fees. In this case, Uber sought to enforce its arbitration policy, arguing that when the plaintiffs created their accounts, they agreed to be bound by all terms of service. Uber contended that under a federal statute called the Federal Arbitration Act, Uber and the users had a binding, irrevocable contract to arbitrate disputes even if the user did not read the terms of use. The court disagreed, describing that in order to enforce the contract, Uber must show that it reasonably communicated its terms of service and that the user accepted the terms. If you want to learn more about this case, the link is going to be on the descriptions in this video. And as far as Priceline goes, I believe they have a very detailed terms of use, one that was written solely to protect the companies more than anything. After I reviewed part one of the terms and doing all the research I've done for this video, I really only have one thing that I would strongly encourage Priceline to do. And if they don't do it already, because as I mentioned earlier, I haven't gone through the entire purchase journey, so I don't know what we may have to click and accept before finalizing a purchase. Nonetheless, the only thing I would suggest is to make their terms of use click wrap. They should make it a click wrap agreement. There are too many benefits. There are too many benefits that come with having a click wrap agreement versus a bro wrap agreement. DocuSign, which is an electronic agreements company based out of California, they have a great white paper written by Marco H.K. Tank and David Whittaker on the effectiveness of click wrap for legally enforceable agreements. The link to this white paper is on the reference on the description of this video. I encourage you all to take a few minutes to read this white paper. It has a lot of valuable information when it comes to click wrap agreements. In conclusion, I want to emphasize that it is very important to remember that accepting terms of use is like signing a contract, making it legally. So again, if you click I accept, you're making it legally binding. So it is in your best interest to make sure that you have read them before accepting them. A lot of people just say, I accept, and just go on. I accept, and they go on, and they don't even know what they're signing. So it is in your best interest to just read over them, just glance over them. Even on a website like Priceline, where the terms of use are on a bros wrap agreement, I will still encourage you to at least take a glance at the terms of use before making any decisions or purchases. Thank you guys so much for watching. For more content, follow me on Instagram at designsxr. And I really hope you guys have a great day. Again, the reference and all the links of all the data that I have established through this video is going to be on the description and on the script of this video. I hope you guys have a wonderful day. Thank you guys for watching.